welcome to any new faces who are joining the inspiration track. We have an exciting panel coming up, and interesting, one of the key themes that's come out from the inspiration track the whole way through is this ability to be authentic as a leader. So the discussion we'll be talking through today is like, how do we build authenticity into our leadership? What does it take to be an authentic leader? And can you actually go too far in being authentic? So I'd like to welcome up onto the stage Dan Hynes, who is partner and head of talent at Atomico, Lizzie Townsend, who's CPO at Monzo, Niall Jones, Director of Employee Experience at Asda, and Lorraine Metcalf, who's former Chief Talent Officer for ZPG. So thank you guys. I lost the panels.
Sorry.
Thank you guys. So I think everyone in this room would agree that what businesses need to build this element of trust is authentic leadership. Being a massive rugby fan, got to remember the World Cup on, I'm always in awe of the way that coaches and managers build these kind of high-performing teams together through the way that they're messaging. But everyone kind of has their own take on what it means to actually be an authentic leader. So what's your view on how you build authenticity into leadership now?
So for me, it's about having the courage to be your genuine self. So how do you be, it's very hard to be somebody else for a good duration of time. And your true self tends to emerge under duress. So words to me that jump out, sentences like self-awareness, all the things that everybody in this audience knows. Self-awareness, regulating that, empathy, motivation, inspiring teams. If you can create an environment of psychological safety through a very empowering culture, very inclusive culture, I think that gives you the ability to have courage. But sometimes you do extend yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I mirror that. You know, but being your authentic self at work means sort of you're not having one persona at home versus one at work. It's exhausting to be something that you're not, or to act out of preference, and to really know intuitively who you are, what you believe in, how you view others. So I think emotional intelligence is kind of the key thing to really tap into, and it's one of the key areas that you can continue growing. It's not like crystallized intelligence, which is fairly sort of fixed and static. It's something that you can keep developing on. But I think to be authentic, you actually have to know who you are. I think that's kind of the first step, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, when I reflected on it, it's down to 4 things for me, and we've talked about some of them, but it's like, you know who you are, first and foremost, and sort of the good and the bad. Be genuine, so, you know, be true to yourself, and we talked about that earlier as well. I think it's about doing the right thing, you know, especially in the face of adversity, and we can all do the right thing when it's easy. I think it's when it's tough. And then I think it's being fair-minded, so, you know, that whole balance between what is the right thing for everybody. Those are the 4 things that I think are important.
I'm now sitting at the end, I think I need to come up with something different. No, I concur with Ryland was saying. Probably what I would add in addition is, once you know who your true self is, and you're not having to compensate to be something else, there's an understanding of the organisation that you'll fit best with, or the role that you'll fit best with, and then that's when you can be truly yourself.
I think it's sort of like EQ and some of these traits and whether they're things that can be coached. So one of the things I said, often you hear like a lot of management skills, you know, you can be trained for, whereas actually to be a leader, you kind of have to earn the right to be a leader, or demonstrating some of these skills. How do you personally approach choosing and developing leaders in a way that allows people to bring their full self into that role?
So, well, one thing is, I think most companies have now woken up to the fact that you can't sheep dip leadership skills. It's just, you might get some useful models, useful insights here and there, but it's not something that you can authentically kind of bring to work each and every day. So I think it is sort of, any sort of leadership development should really start with self. So if it is sort of an emotional intelligence, insights, profiling, where you're having deep sort of coaching, understanding your view of the world, your view of others, I think sort of starting there is a really good place. And I also think it's just about constantly having coaching and personal development and bespoking any development to your weaknesses. Don't just sort of start going on change management or how to comms through a VUCA environment. That's all well and good, but until you know how you are acting and how people are perceiving you, it's not going to be that much useful to you or the business.
So it's almost helping the individual to bring out those traits.
Yeah.
I think there's something, it has to be one of your core values.
Yeah.
So you can teach management skills. I think leadership is something that's inherent within you. But at the same time, it also depends on how you bring the people in. So if you have graduate recruitment programs, you're looking for these unpolished diamonds, if you will. There are things I think you can look for. I used to run a team that ran a graduate recruitment program, and we were looking for athletes. So we wanted people, especially rowers, British rowers. 4 o'clock in the morning, cold water, pouring down with rain. If you can go and do that week in, week out, there's something within you that does right you. If it's more senior talent, so C-level, VP level, it might be. I think it's really important that, so we're investors, we invest in early stage companies, and we help the companies build their people frameworks. So defining your leadership early, I think, is super important, and having people fit that kind of culture rather than trying to bring in what's it Google or Facebook or Uber is a recipe for disaster. So I'll say doubling down on that, holding that true, and then holding people accountable to the principle that you want to build as an organisation.
I think building on that as well, from what Dan was saying, at Ziegler, what we did, and it was quite revolutionary, but it sounds really, really obvious. Everybody almost aspires to be a leader. It's sort of the badge of honour. And for us, it was about celebrating the people who put their hand up and said, I don't want to do that. I've been put in this role, but in actual fact, now I've learnt a bit about it, it's just not me. I don't want to do it. And the exec and some of the people, even in the HR team, struggled a bit with that. Whereas for me, it was like, that's great, because they're probably not doing it anyway. Or even if they are, they're probably not being authentic and they're probably not enjoying it. So best that they should, settle for something that they're great at and be gurus at that than think the pinnacle of their career is going to be mediocre leadership.
So creating dual career paths.
Totally. Yeah.
I suppose to build on that, we talk about development, I think, understanding. I think the thing about authentic leadership is we talk about it's almost like a certain type of leadership, whereas you can be authentic but demonstrate many different traits. So it's understanding within your teams, a leadership team or a smaller team, whatever it may be, etc. What could be an additional value into that team, etc. And therefore it's the leader who can best portray that and add that to the team, etc.
There's a part around being consistent, I think is really important. So I've worked with some execs who can complete nightmares. They'll blow up your plans, they'll go deep into your thing, they'll try and derail you, you expect it, so you can anticipate it. It's the ones that are kind of all over the place that just you can't figure out what to do. So I think being consistent is a really core attribute for leadership.
It was interesting when on leadership training, how you help them leader, so that everyone is like avoiding any kind of cookie cutter approach to building leadership. So how do you design those training programs to help people become leaders and avoid getting a kind of corporate stamp on what leadership should be?
A sore throat from a long weekend, as Phil knows.
I think there are some things that we put into our leadership programs that were standardised. So things like, understanding some of the principles, some of the frameworks, the ways that we wanted leaders to perform in our company, what was important. I think the Peakon tool really, really helped because it called out loud and clear to people what colleagues were saying about them, what was important to them, and how they could focus that. I think the things that were sort of perhaps more unique were the tools that we use to help people really understand their strengths and their development areas, and then building the support mechanisms and the coaching and the maybe even mentoring to go along with helping those people be the best that they possibly could be. I think that's where the unique bit came for us.
And you also have a broad range of experience on this panel, it's a number of different industries. So you kind of could make the assumption if we need different leadership skills based on the industry that you work in. Are there any specific traits that you've seen that are aligned to industries, and how have you gone around bringing those out for people?
I think So at Monzo, we're very, very clear that there are two different types of leaders. There is the leader that is there to look after your personal development, your career, how you're doing as a person, your well-being, and then there is a task leader. And we've made a very conscious effort to separate the two. We find that if you're asking one thing, like both things of one person, it's really difficult, and typically what you'll do is you'll slip into task mode because that's the thing that's front of mind, that's the thing that's on fire. So, and I think that's probably a trend certainly within fintech and tech organisations, that we want to separate the two because actually they're two really, really important roles, but they require two very different things. Yeah.
I'd say the similarities actually with retail. It tends to be propensity for people to be sort of quite action orientated, reflect and learn later, etc. So again, as leaders sort of evolve through the retail organisations I worked with, it's refocusing on actually where they had to be a different type of leader, sort of move from task orientation to people orientation.
And yet, interestingly, I've worked in high tech for years, and the same is true there as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether a lot of it comes down to the culture, you know, and the values of the business and how they expect their leaders to lead, and you know, performance to be valued and measured, I guess.
I think you have to be really implicit. So in companies you have your technical stack, and we kind of put this thing called a people stack. So you have your vision, your mission, leadership managers, recruiting, onboarding, compensation, take it way down. But there has to be some implicit penalty for not adhering to values and the culture. So we rolled out management training, the management effectiveness at Atomico probably about 2 years ago. And we made it implicit that we were going to do this. We got all the managers together, we told them what was coming down the pike. We gave them 6 months where we'd support them, we'd train them up. And after 6 months and after their first survey, if they weren't meeting bar, then we'd got a plan. 6 months later, if you weren't hitting the plan, you were taken out of that role. So it was massively implicit that there were implications for not being good at leadership or management. Now we see that works out, but so far, Peakon scores have done it. People seem to be more engaged, and the managers are developing new skill sets, and the leadership teams coming together as more cohesive.
I think interesting, one of the words that I think associated with leadership is being able to show your vulnerability. How important do you feel that is, and can you go too far then with being authentic?
I think it's a great space, and the Brené Brown kind of daring to be brave, it has sort of changed the way that we look at authentic leadership, and I strongly believe in it, and I think that you do have to show up, you have to be in it to win it, and you know, so I definitely believe that. I think certainly at Monzo, for example, we have also sort of established a value which is default to transparency, and that has sort of a bit like authentic leadership. You can tip too far sometimes. So you can have an authentic leader that suddenly is oversharing, and that has ramifications for their team, because actually, do they want to see someone that hasn't really thought about the intention of their message, that hasn't really, that has been maybe too emotional, and that his or her audience is carrying that for them. So I think it's a really fine line with transparency and authentic leadership to get the right balance. Yeah. Because I think you do have to think about your audience and, you know, how you're managing. Are you serving them, or are you just sort of leading in front of your team, and how effective is that?
I think you mentioned about how important like EQ is then. There's still lots of changing as well, except PG.
Yeah, I mean, you know, went through dramatic growth, and there were times when there were just things you couldn't talk about as a leader. So I joined, you know, within 6 months we IPO'd. I was told at interview it would be 18 to 24 months, little did I know. And, you know, I had to carry on my day job with my team, a very small team, one of whom's now at Peakon, and, you know, couldn't tell them that we were going through IPO because it was price sensitive. You know, and they knew there was something going on, but they trusted that there was enough transparency usually that when there was something confidential, it just wasn't able to be spoken about. When we had acquisitions after we became public, we just couldn't talk about them.
Sounds like you weren't their trust. So they knew you were working by them.
Exactly. Yeah, and if I said, you know, I would tell you if I could, they never then pushed beyond that. So, you know, I do think there's a very fine line, you know, to Libby's point. But I don't think people come to work and expect their leader to come in and sob on them.
Yeah.
I think you have to recognise there is a point where you've got to, be contained as well.
So when you build that trust up front, you then have the ability to be transparent in the right way.
Yeah.
Without creating.
You have to go about it. So
Yeah.
you have to look after your team to a degree, put them first, put business in certain situations, protect them from things that might distract them. We had a similar thing at Skype. We were being acquired by Microsoft. I used to work at Google. The one company I hate most, and it's Microsoft. So I didn't want to go to Microsoft, but I had to show a good face, had to go through inspections, go through E&A, had to do a contract, had to get the salaries done, and then popped out at the end. The team, the first time I got their salaries, I told them I wasn't going to share the take because they were good enough. Going back to the managers and they were saying, what's my new salary? I said, trust me, I'll come back. And a week later I came back and said, trust me again, I'll come back. And the third time, I've done the package I deserve. But you have to time and time.
I was just thinking on the vulnerability piece. I think there are opportunities where that's good for leaders to show that, and I guess it's just still this myth that leaders have to know everything and sort of set the direction for everything. It's actually when they can put themselves in a situation where they get solutions and answers for their teams, and they will admit, I'm not the expert, etc. You're going to shape our way forward, and I've seen that happen quite successfully. I've seen more programs like reverse mentoring comes through and all of this, etc. I think that's another opportunity where leaders should allow themselves to sort of say, I'm not the bastion of all knowledge for everything.
That's a great place to test out the potential of your team. So, emerging leadership, you're good at this thing, you're not great at that, so you can put people in, you can test them, you can see how they've managed the team, how they communicate. And the best thing is when you can go out of office for 2 weeks. You completely switch off because you know that the structure will be
I think so. It comes down to sort of self-management. Like you have to be an authentic leader, be vulnerable, but you've got to know your limits. But then there's also, I think, the remedy to that, and I think you touched on it just a moment ago, is actually as long as the leader shares the same beliefs and purpose of the organisation, that cuts out a lot of the problems, because you can be vulnerable because other people will share and relate to that vulnerability if you all believe in the same kind of purpose and belief. And I think that's
creates a level of understanding.
Yeah.
That leads quite nicely on, and I imagine on this panel, and a lot of people in the room, have a lot of people that are in roles where they're first-time managers. You call it like expert managers, right? You're the best at that job, therefore you become the manager of the team. And so you need a whole new set of skills because you're now responsible for 6, 7, how many people's different careers. Like, how do you go about helping, or do you have any success stories you could share of people that have stepped up into those roles in your organisations and been able to deliver on all these, traits of saying, well, you have to earn trust, but this experience is required to do it.
Monzo's full of first-time managers, and we love them all. We've grown crazy over the last sort of 18 months, and so we have been stepping people up who were sort of customer operations, answering customer queries, to suddenly being a squad captain, where they've got sort of 10 eyes all on them. What do we do now? And I think the first thing we sort of looked at was coming up with a blueprint, because there is certain prescriptive tasks that people get comfort knowing how to do it. So there's kind of getting a level of knowledge and experience up. And then there is sort of bolting on kind of this emotional intelligence, knowing yourself. We've got some really amazing managers actually that are first time round managers, and it's grown quite organically, but one of them has set up kind of a community where she set up a manager unconference where you can come and there is no agenda and you just chat about, it's quite a lonely place, isn't it, being a leader, and you can just chat about anything that's particularly like gnarly, difficult to solve, and can share. So she's sort of taken that off her own back, and then she's also set up a Slack channel, kind of her learnings, and it's just sort of gone viral really across the business. And it's just that level of sort of confidence and bravery to say that I'm finding it hard, I want to set this up, has really resonated with lots of people across the business.
And sort of embracing that vulnerability when you're into it.
Yeah.
Let's throw some CPG.
Yeah, we one of the things that we found quite helpful was, with this spirit of everybody believes that's the next move that they should make. if we brought in trainees or apprentices, we sort of gave them that safe space for aspiring leaders who could then go and be a mentor or coach to some of the more junior people coming in. And we found it really great because they weren't exposed, but they were experiencing some of the challenges that it can be to be a leader and what was expected of them. And, you know, there were people who said, that's not for me. Equally, there were people who just flourished through that route, and that's where their development plans then led on to.
And there's also this thing of like, you go from like buddy to boss, which is quite a difficult transition. You can't be everyone's friend anymore, especially you want to give constructive feedback. How did you go around tackling that, Niall?
Yeah, so I've actually experienced this lots of times in my career, because there's always roles or supervisor roles that are not quite manager, and I always actually empathise with them most because they're sort of making a brave decision and they already know the risk of they're going to lose this team, these friends, etc. And that, well, actually on all occasions what we've done, or what I've done, but also the organisations worked in, is put in support program, buddy programs around them where we don't go too heavy. There's always a management toolkit, etc. But especially for that population, just a buddy program to literally, like what you were saying, is people who've gone through the pain, etc. So we'll actually, you're going to go through sort of this journey, etc. You're going to find a job, but you'll come out the other end, which is the bit where you'll start focusing on actually becoming a manager and using all the toolkit to be a manager.
What we try and do is, again, we're getting a little bit earlier, so 20 people going to 200, is we try and encourage to bring in senior recruiters as quickly as possible, but also a senior people partner, and make a very distinct difference between the two, because if they get blurred, it doesn't work out. But we spend a lot of time working on the role of a manager in that particular country. So there's the technical skills, but also things like critical conversations, just things that are kind of the toolkit that you referred to, so they're fully armed, but at the same time appreciating they're going to make mistakes. So you want to have psychological safety. You want to have a framework to support them as they transition through. But I do think you need a really solid people person that can kind of coach and mentor and kind of show them the path. If anybody's looking for a cool people role in a Series A company, come and talk to me afterwards. We've got loads.
You've got your plug-in for your role down there. Put your Peakon pipe. So this input, so knowing from data then that people tend to join companies because they don't like the culture and the values, and then people leave managers, so we know the importance of if a great manager leaves, the impact that has on the business, and also a less great manager, what that can do. How do you go around building environments and the cultures that allow leaders to be authentic? You can start us off now.
Feels like a really big question. I guess the thing I thought about first as you started talking about that is this, and what I've experienced and where there's challenges where people are leaving the company because of the managers, is I find actually sometimes in the organisations that I've worked in, I heard elsewhere, we forget about that middle management population, and we just assume that the job is just to go and execute and devote little or not enough time into whatever it is. If there's a change in culture or a new strategy, whatever it is, we forget to invest the time in them to get them on board with the program, to then obviously equip them and inspire them. You know, it's not just about equipping them with tools to just go and do the job, but to make them feel passionate and feel as though time's been invested in them with their leaders to then go and replicate that onwards and sort of, I suppose, be ambassadors of the culture and values, etc. So in terms of, I guess, being authentic, I know that's my starting point with that. That's where I've seen that, because managers, middle managers, what I've experienced a lot, and you know, through feedback and Peakon and many surveys, etc., is there's huge amounts of conflicting demands on them. There's day-to-day operational, chief sales, service targets, etc., or you know, backfilling recruits or whatever it may be. Then there's compliance, GDPR, you name it. You can quote a huge list, and they are actually the group that are caught in the middle. And I guess it's for leaders to come in and go, strip away the stuff that is most important, and the stuff that actually it's got to be done, but we can keep that prioritised, and then we'll sort of be more purposeful about what we do and where we add value.
To your point, I think if you can unlock the role of an effective manager, it unlocks all the power and passion in the employees beneath him or her. And again, agreeing with you, if you can work a way to give them the skills, design the outcomes, give them support, and then importantly, inspect what you expect. I think I'm a massive fan of people dashboards, and then you start looking at employee, the temperature by business unit, by tenure, by gender, whatever you want to look at, and you'll start to see these patterns emerging very quickly. And then it's what you do about that. And is it somebody who's failing, who should be in the role? Is someone who's not a good fit for your organisation? Has that person just joined and bought their stuff from somewhere else, etc., etc. But you need to have the ability to spot it, do something more correct, and then you can take action based on what you discover.
We talk a little bit particularly relevant in like fast growth businesses of giving leaders that kind of ability to know that they can fail. And you have to how have you guys embraced that in companies like Monzo, where it's a rocket ship in terms of the scale you guys have had?
Yeah, I mean, so failing is part of our culture in terms of the product type ceremonies where we have retrospectives. We have an always on feedback culture. I know lots of businesses say that, but we have. It's not finessed yet. Some of the feedback is probably a bit too candid when I talk about transparency. Some of it can feel like full frontal transparency that we're not prepared for. So we haven't quite nailed that yet, but at the same time, culturally everything is very open. Everything is in the quest to make money work for everyone, and that is quite a guiding line. So it's about not holding people to kind of a public sort of flogging, but it is very clear about, actually we made 12 bets, 5 of them stuck, these didn't, let's understand why. And it comes from the top, of course, it always comes from the top, and we have all hands every week where we talk about what's gone well, what we're anxious about, and what needs to happen next. And it's just part of who we are and the routine of that. The culture, it absolutely is. But also I think just looking at kind of people processes, I know we sort of spoke about kind of, it's not all about the process that you follow, but actually I think systemically it is. And so if organisations are set up to have performance reviews rather than looking at performance motivation, almost instantly you're talking about two different things. If you're talking about performance motivation, you're going to have more authentic leaders that can have meaningful conversations. If you're just focusing on career development rather than the career framework that we're going to be putting everyone through, it's different. So if your people practices kind of behaviourally nudge leaders to do the right thing, that's going to automatically help. So values and also people processes.
That makes sense. So we're going to come to the home stretch, and I've seen my iPad's not been going crazy of questions that are coming through, so I'll make sure I get to kind of a few of them. One of my favourite books at the moment is Bill Campbell's The $1 Trillion Coach, and there's a phrase in that just sticks with me, which is your title makes you a manager, your people make you a leader. Like, who do you say is an inspiring, authentic leader, and what makes them stand out to you in your eyes? If you want to kick us off and go around that.
Sure. So there's a company up in Helsinki called Supercell. It makes games. It's about 200 people in there. It's worth now about $10 billion, massive valuation, exit actually. Ilkka's the CEO, and his stated goal is to be the least powerful CEO on the planet. And his org chart is the other way around. It's upside down. So he sees himself as serving the organisation, not reporting it to him, and that's a very simple way of kind of saying where he sees himself in the whole scheme of things. So he's not the best game designer, might kill me for that. He's an awesome leader. It's a really strong culture. There's no HR at Supercell. So all the HR that we built 3 years ago is delivered through the manager, the line manager, and that's by design. Because they didn't feel like they needed someone to put all these programs in place. They wanted it to be done through the line manager. The team hire themselves, they fire. So when a new person joins that cell, the whole team gives a thumbs up or thumbs down after 30 days if the person stays or not the manager. So I like it. I'm a big fan of how Ilkka's built his organisation.
Yeah, very cool. Very open.
With shock faces.
A lot of note taking as well.
One of the most powerful leaders I have seen is actually at Monzo. I will name no names, but Monzo is a hyper-growth organisation, and one thing that is very clear is that a leader of a 200 to 500 organisation is very different from a 1,500 to 3,000. And so we had one of our leaders stand up and actually tell a story. It was an African folklore story, and it was really powerful. But effectively, he was standing up and he was saying, I was the person for that early stage. I'm now no longer the person for the next stage of growth, and graciously kind of owned the message. And it was just really, really powerful. And I think that authenticity for me meant that he could lead the way for other people who will be in Monzo, who will outgrow, or the role will outgrow them. And it's no failing, it's just a reality of what people's strengths and weaknesses kind of are.
So I've had a couple of really, inspirational leaders over my career. One of them was because he was actually incredibly humble. He wasn't your archetypal, really powerful leader, but he gave some really incredibly powerful messages. And I think one of the key things that he did was he was the most amazing coach. And he instilled that skill in everybody within his leadership team and his management team beneath that as well, and ran programs around it and really invested and put his money where his mouth was. And I think that was so important because he was such a good, genuine person, but he could make you do the impossible. And actually pushed you, could be really quite tough, but he was just so genuine and genuinely wanted you to succeed that you almost did it in spite of yourself rather than because of yourself, because you didn't want to let him down.
And for me, I joined an organisation which had a huge people change agenda, and after 6 months, I guess it's a bit about bringing your true self and finding somewhere to fit. It was a bit like I just couldn't be part of the organisation. But this leader, Sarah, she showed immense belief in me, because I was seeing a situation. I thought, well, it could be this, but I didn't believe that I could be part of that journey to make that happen. And we had an amazing conversation where she demonstrated belief in me, but she supported me to develop the attributes that I needed to be able to succeed further. And what that also created was more of an intense loyalty from me to her, because what I also saw in her as well is this sort of organisational challenge that was going on. She was a lady who has been an authentic leader, who's been very consistent, who was swimming upstream in the organisation. I felt I want to be someone, an ally, to be alongside her, like other people wanted to be as well, to help swim upstream with her and make this change in the organisation, because we all sort of had, and again this goes back to this purpose, we knew that the organisation wasn't being as brilliant as it could be, and she helped us sort of come together and believe in us, but also support us, from that. Resilience is something I developed as an attribute, which has helped me immensely in my career for the last 14, 15 years.
I think almost that the theme that's been often there is like great leaders have the ability to make the complex simple. When you're stressing about it, they seem to have a way of putting something on the board. You're like, how did I not see that? And then give them the confidence to go and execute. They were pretty much up on time, but just as a kind of quick fire round at the end, one of the questions that's kind of come up is, what would your message be to the kind of people professionals in the room? Like, if there was one kind of actionable piece of advice you give to help leaders in your organisation to be more authentic, what would it be? I'm going to reverse the order and come back round now.
I guess it's find those traits or characteristics that that in that person you see ignites them, and it's their passion, etc. And then where can you find a place for that in your organisation?
And I think if I think about supporting leaders, I think it's a really tough time for leaders at the moment. I think we're existing. I think it's a great time for people professionals, and never been better. And I think the only thing holding all of us back is ourselves. But I think from a leader's perspective, I think we live in a bit of a dichotomy at the moment. I think on the one hand, we've got a colleague base who are saying, you know, I want that next job title, I want that next career move, and yet they want flat hierarchies and they don't want to be managed on a day-to-day or led on a day-to-day basis. So I think a leader at the moment is going through quite a challenging, delicate time, and I think as people professionals, you know, we can do nothing better than to just be there and support them. It's quite a lonely place. It's quite confusing. I think it's picking through quite a minefield at the minute, and I think we've got a really important role to support in that.
Echo both of those. So just in terms of holding the space for leaders, the psychological safety, holding the space for them to be able to articulate what they're struggling with, and it's okay that you're struggling. So yeah, creating those sorts of systems and support mechanisms within businesses is key. I think helping them also understand how they can grow emotionally and be more resilient and more agile, because ultimately almost sort of 90% of their role is around using that skill or using those skills. So yeah, and individuality, just recognizing that each leader is different, they bring their own strengths, and we have to sort of hold the mirror up and help them see what that is, and then help them develop a plan to actually make sure that they're making the most of those superpowers each and every day. So it's more bespoke and enabling that in an organisation.
That's very good. And then, to wrap up.
So obviously echo my fellow panelists. What I would say is this is your time. So for a very long time you've been asking for data. You've been asking for themes, you've been asking for dashboards. Now you have the tools that you're within your toolkit. If I would give one bit of advice, that is to develop your coaching skills. I think that is something that is underlooked by, I'm going to say HR professionals, but I see a lot of senior people going to HR roles from, no offence, the finance organisation or products, because they're very good with data and they're very good with numbers and themes. And I think historically we may not have been as good as that. So, you know, this is our time. Step up, develop your coaching skills, develop your analytical skills. And just go and build some great companies where people love coming to work every single day, because we spend so much time at work. It should be something that we love going to, celebrated, and we all grow from the experience.
Definitely, cool. So I think some really good takeaways, certainly some stuff that, like the idea on like buddy programs for leaders, I think about that for onboarders, but not necessarily when people step into leadership roles, and obviously the focus on how important it is to be authentic and accept those vulnerabilities. So thank you to the panel, it was amazing. With a round of applause, thank you guys.